Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because you want to get smart, fast, on complex topics, and, well, that's exactly what we deliver.
Yep.
Today we're starting an exploration, really an introduction, into a very insightful series of Medium articles. They focus on enterprise cloud adoption and migration, specifically to Google Cloud.
And the author is Darren Lester, known as Dasbo. He's a really seasoned enterprise cloud architect.
Exactly. So think of this as maybe your shortcut to understanding the key things any large organization needs to weigh up when they're thinking about moving to the cloud.
And what makes Dasbo's viewpoint so useful, I think, is just how broad his experience is. He hasn't just, thought about cloud migration in theory.
Right.
He's been in the trenches, developer, different architecture roles, all of that. It gives his writing this real-world feel, anticipating the actual problems different teams, run into.
Precisely. And for you listening, if you want that thorough understanding, but without getting completely swamped in detail, Dasbo's series really aims to be that guide. It's comprehensive, but hopefully digestible. So our goal today in this deep dive is just to map out the scope and the value of what he's putting together. Sort of a high-level view of the toolkit he's offering for navigating these enterprise cloud journeys.
And it's a toolkit that definitely meets a need. A lot of companies starting out with cloud adoption, they just face this huge list of questions, right? It can feel bewildering.
Totally.
Dasbo's series is set up to give you that end-to-end framework. Starts with the big strategic stuff, goes all the way down to the details of running things efficiently day to day in the cloud.
And crucially, pointing out the common mistakes.
Yes. Importantly, highlighting those common pitfalls, trying to help organizations avoid those, often costly errors.
Okay, so let's get into it. The first article Dasbo wrote for this series starts with a question that sounds simple, but it's actually incredibly deep for any enterprise looking at the cloud. Where to start?
Yeah, that question alone tells you it's complex. And what's interesting is how that one question just opens up this whole cascade of interconnected challenges. Dasbo really gets into the weeds, the real sticky points.
He doesn't gloss over them.
No. He raises a whole bunch of critical things that probably sound familiar to anyone in enterprise IT. Like, how do you even put together a coherent cloud strategy?
Right.
What does it mean for your existing vendors? The big ones, IBM, Microsoft, Oracle. What about those data centers, mainframes even, with Ferry? And how do you get the skills you need inside your existing teams? Do you need a CQE? A cloud center of excellence? What's the role of a landing zone, that sort of foundational setup in Google Cloud?
And then he shifts into the operational stuff, which sometimes gets missed in the early excitement, right?
For sure. Like defining roles and responsibilities. Who runs the platform versus who uses it? Where does SRE, site reliability engineering, fit in?
Maybe quickly explain SRE for those who aren't familiar.
Oh, right. Yeah, SRE is basically an engineering approach focused on making production systems reliable, scalable. It's super important in the cloud. Dasbo definitely emphasizes that.
Okay, good. And making it easy for people to actually use the cloud.
Yes, enabling consumption. How do you make it straightforward for different teams to actually spin up and use the resources you set up?
Which then leads straight into the big one. What about all your existing applications?
The application portfolio. Do you just lift and shift them as is?
Yeah.
What if you're heavily invested in VMware? How does that play out?
And, oh boy, Oracle databases.
Laughs slightly.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room often. Oracle databases, the licensing complexities. He even looks at automation tools, things that can help speed up the migration itself.
And it doesn't stop once you're migrated, does it? He also hits on operating efficiently.
Definitely. How to run things smoothly, how to spot and cut out waste, that whole FinOps area. And then the exciting part, using the cloud for data, for AI.
Yeah.
And finally, he circles back to that question. What are the common mistakes? What do people get wrong?
Wow, that is a comprehensive list.
It is. But what's really insightful is Dasbo's point that these aren't, unique problems for just one industry.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. He says whether you're in finance or retail or pharma, lots of enterprises have similar legacy IT setups. And that means they often face surprisingly similar hurdles moving to the cloud.
Hey, that's actually quite reassuring, knowing you're not alone in facing these things.
It makes it less daunting. Yeah. And even better, Dasbo says, look, there are established ways to tackle these. Proven approaches exist.
That kind of guidance is gold.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what his Medium series aims to provide. It's not just listing problems. It's a structured guide through that whole transformation, from strategy right through to, governing the cloud environment long term.
So it's practical then, beyond just flagging the challenges, what are the main areas the series actually covers? It sounds like a step-by-step thing.
It really tries to be. He breaks down the overall phases of a typical cloud adoption. Then he offers checklists marking them as mandatory or optional to help with your strategy and building that business case.
Okay.
And, importantly, he goes deep into designing, building, managing, and governing your setup in Google Cloud.
Getting that foundation right seems paramount. Secure, well-managed from day one.
Exactly. Then he moves to the practicalities of your current stuff.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate, categorize, and then actually migrate all those different applications and workloads?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing tech is just one piece. He talks about building the skills, the capabilities of your teams, getting people ready for a cloud world.
The people side again.
Yep. And finally, cost transparency, optimization, FinOps, making sure you're using the cloud efficiently, cost-effectively.
It really does sound holistic. Strategy, tech, people, finance, all connected. That's often what makes these huge projects succeed or fail, isn't it? That integrated view.
It really is.
Now, you mentioned the series is ongoing. Can you give us a feel for the structure so far? If someone listening wants to jump in, is there a recommended order?
Yeah, it's laid out pretty logically, starting with the basics. The first batch of articles covers things like defining your goals and overall strategy.
Okay.
He talks about potentially cutting software license costs using open source. I think that can be a big win for many companies. He addresses data center exits, mainframe exits.
The big physical infrastructure moves.
Right. Strategies for lift and shift to GCE or GCVE if you're bringing VMware workloads.
Yeah.
And then he wraps that initial part up with a strategy checklist.
Yeah.
Helps you nail down the early planning.
So that first group really hits those immediate big questions organizations have right at the start.
Exactly. Then the second plan piece is all about building that business case. Super critical. And using the Google Cloud Migration Center tool to get good estimates for effort and cost.
Tooling matters.
It does. Then the third article outlines the core principles. Principles for adoption, principles for how teams will actually use the cloud services.
Setting those ground rules early seems smart. Avoids confusion later.
Absolutely. Then the fourth set gets into discovery. Mapping your current as-is environment to the cloud. Again, using the Migration Center tool.
Right.
And then it breaks down how to map things strategically. Infrastructure, OS, middleware, databases, to really get the value out of the cloud, not just replicate what you had.
So not just moving, but improving during the move. That's where the real wins are.
Precisely. Part 5 tackles the organizational change piece. Building skills, upskilling teams, the CKOE role. It also covers SRE, site reliability engineering, and defining those SLIs, SLOs, SLAs, the service level stuff.
Making sure services perform as needed.
Yep. So it's tech, but also people and process changes needed for the long run. That complete picture.
It keeps coming back to that holistic view. Super important.
Indeed. Then the sixth major section is a really deep dive into designing your Google Cloud landing zone.
Okay, the foundation.
Exactly. It covers a ton. Design considerations generally, specifics for Kubernetes and GKE, setting up monitoring, logging, billing, labeling, all crucial for management.
Cost management, too, with billing and labeling.
Yes. Then infrastructure as code, GitOps for automation, practical steps for onboarding teams to the landing zone, and then the actual deployment. It's thorough.
Sounds incredibly detailed. What's planned after the landing zone is built?
Seventh is about enabling users, your internal consumers, tenants, making it easy for them to use the cloud environment. Introduces the idea of a project factory to streamline creating new projects.
Okay, making it usable.
Then the eighth set looks at accelerating migrations, doing it at scale. Talks about a migration factory concept, tools, and the strategy of what to migrate and when.
Prioritization, basically.
All right. And finally, the ninth planned article pulls it together with FinOps and ongoing operational efficiency. Maximize value, minimize waste in the cloud.
It really is an impressive roadmap. Covers that whole life cycle. And you said Dasbo's still adding to it?
He is. It's an evolving resource. He encourages people to follow him on Medium, subscribe, so you get notified as new articles drop.
Good tip. Let's talk a bit more about the author, Darren Lester Dasbo. You mentioned his diverse background. How does that shape what he offers here?
Well, going through those different roles, developer, solutions architect, now enterprise cloud architect, it gives him this really rounded view. He's seen these cloud adoption challenges from multiple angles.
Practical experience.
Loads of it. And you can tell from the writing. He anticipates what different people in the company will worry about, and the advice feels grounded, like it comes from actual projects.
So he's not just talking theory. He's likely seen these projects succeed and, well, sometimes struggle.
Exactly. He's actually said one of his main aims is helping organizations dodge those common mistakes that can sink cloud projects.
Right.
Because he's probably seen them happen. That experience adds weight.
It definitely sounds like this series could be hugely valuable for any enterprise figuring out Google Cloud adoption. It's structured end-to-end and clearly based on real hard-won experience.
I think so. If you're in a large organization and feeling a bit overwhelmed by the idea of moving to the cloud, Dasbo's work seems to offer a clear path, breaks down this massive undertaking into steps you can actually grasp.
Okay, so just to recap then, this introductory deep dive into Darren Lester's Medium series, it's given us a great map of the resources he's creating for enterprises looking at or already doing Google Cloud adoption. It's comprehensive, driven by experience, and tackles those key challenges from the very beginning, the strategy, all the way through to keeping things running efficiently.
And remember, it's still growing. This first look just gives you a sense of the breadth and the potential value it holds for you.
Absolutely. So thinking about everything we've touched on today, the huge range of challenges, strategy, org change, technical migrations, cost optimization, it's a lot. What single aspect of enterprise cloud adoption do you think is maybe the most critical key to success?
That's a tough question, I know.
That is tough.
And maybe it's a question that digging deeper into Dasbo's series might help you, our listener, start to answer for yourself. It might even spark new questions for your own cloud journey. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.